You are on HOA checkmate. The tow hook was inches away. I do not care what you think you saw. Karen stood in the yard with a measuring wheel yelling that she would charge me for every foot she walked. Cynthia Anderson, treasurer of the Redwood Landing Association in Spokane, Washington, had turned a simple fence installation into a personal vendetta, and right now she was screaming about setback violations, while her measuring wheel clicked across my lawn like a metronome of doom. I had a pry bar lying on the ground near the corner post, and she kept glancing at it like I was planning to use it on her instead of the stubborn old fence panels I had just ripped out. This all started 3 weeks ago when I pulled the permit for a 6-foot cedar privacy fence to replace the rotting chain link disaster that came with the house. I work as an accountant. I keep a clean ledger and receipts for everything, and I figured a fence project would be straightforward. File the paperwork, hire a crew, done. I take care of my disabled younger brother, and the last thing I needed was more chaos in my life. But Redwood Landing is one of those places where the board calls everything a setback emergency, and Cynthia had been waiting for someone to challenge. The morning after I filed my permit with the city, I found an envelope taped to my front door. Inside was a printed notice, no HOA letterhead, just a paragraph claiming my proposed fence violated setback requirements, and that I needed to submit revised plans within 72 hours or face daily fines. No signature, no meeting invite, just a threat. I called the HOA office and got voicemail. I emailed the board. Nothing. Then 2 days later, Cynthia showed up in my driveway at 7 in the morning with a clipboard and a clear plastic sleeve and a tape measure. She did not knock. She just started measuring from my front corner stake to the sidewalk, calling out numbers to herself, writing notes. I came outside in my white bucket hat and tan polo shirt, still holding my coffee, and asked what she was doing. You are in violation of Article 12, she said, not looking up. Your fence encroaches on the community setback easement. I do not have the fence up yet, I said. I just pulled the permit. The stakes are the violation, she said. You put them inside the restricted zone. I am documenting this for the hearing. There was no hearing scheduled. I checked the HOA portal that night and found nothing. I called the management company the next morning, and they confirmed no violation had been filed. So I emailed Cynthia directly and asked for clarification. She responded in under 10 minutes. The email was 2 sentences. I do not negotiate with violations. You have until Friday to move your stakes, or the fine starts at $50 per day. I pulled up the HOA covenants and read Article 12. It mentions setback requirements for structures, but nothing about survey stakes. I printed the whole section, highlighted the relevant parts, and walked over to the clubhouse to drop off a response. That is when I met my first ally. A neighborhood security guard supervisor named Luis was standing near the clubhouse door, looking bored. He saw my folder and asked if I was dealing with Cynthia. Good luck, he said. She's been doing this to people for 2 years. Last guy gave up and moved his whole deck. What do you mean, gave up? I said. Luis shrugged. She finds something in the rules, blows it up, threatens daily fines until you fold. Management does not push back because she controls the budget. I asked if anyone had ever beaten her. He said one couple tried, but Cynthia got them towed during a hearing for an expired guest pass and they dropped the complaint. I thanked him and left, but I was already planning. If Cynthia wanted a paper fight, I could do that. I scan and file everything at work. I know how to build a timeline. The survey stakes kept getting moved. I would set them in the morning based on the city survey map, and by evening they would be 6 inches closer to the house. I started taking photos with timestamps every morning and night. On the 3rd day, I caught movement on my doorbell camera. Cynthia, alone, pulling one of the stakes and replanting it. I downloaded the clip and saved 3 copies. I did not confront her. Not yet. I did not chase her accusations, because I already had the receipts. Instead, I emailed the management company and the entire board with a formal complaint, attaching photos, timestamps, and a request for an impartial hearing. Cynthia replied to the whole chain within an hour. She accused me of harassment and claimed I had threatened her verbally during the driveway encounter. That was a lie. I had never raised my voice. but she was setting up a narrative. The next morning, I woke up to find a stop work notice zip-tied to my mailbox. It was printed on plain paper, no official HOA seal, and it claimed my contractor was not licensed. I called my contractor. He laughed. He had been licensed in Washington for 15 years and had pulled permits in Redwood Landing a dozen times. He sent me a copy of his license and a screenshot of his active city permit. I forwarded both to the board and copied the city building department. Cynthia did not respond to that email. Instead, she showed up at my house with the measuring wheel. That is when she started yelling about charging me for every foot she walked, claiming her inspection time was billable under HOA enforcement rules. I asked her to show me that rule. She said it was in the treasurer handbook and I did not have access. I said I wanted to see it anyway. She said I do not negotiate with violations and marched back to her car, dragging the measuring wheel behind her like a sad pet. That night I got an email from the board president. It was short and carefully worded. The board had reviewed my complaint and determined that the fence project required additional review due to potential easement conflicts. They were scheduling a hearing for 2 weeks out. In the meantime, I was to halt all construction and remove the survey stakes. If I did not comply, the HOA would fine me $50 per day starting immediately. I did not remove the stakes. I reinforced them with longer metal rods and poured a little concrete at the base so they could not be pulled easily. Then I installed 2 more doorbell cameras covering the side yard and the back corner. I wanted every angle. The survey stakes kept getting moved anyway. Someone was using a pry bar or a sledgehammer to crack the concrete and yank them out. I caught it on camera twice. The first time it was Cynthia. The second time it was a guy I did not recognize, but he arrived in a truck with a Redwood Landing Association decal on the door. I filed a police report for vandalism and property damage. The officer who came out was polite but clear. "This is a civil dispute," he said. "You need to handle it through the HOA or a lawyer." But he did take my statement and gave me an incident number. That incident number became important later. I started getting emails from neighbors. Not support, threats. One couple claimed my fence project was lowering their property value. Another said I was creating a safety hazard by leaving tools and materials in my yard. A third accused me of blocking access to a shared drainage easement that did not exist on any map I could find. All the emails had the same tone, the same phrasing. I recognized Cynthia's style. She was pressuring neighbors to sign complaints and calling it community support. I printed every email, highlighted the repeated phrases, and added them to my file. Then I did something Cynthia was not expecting. I filed a public records request with the HOA management company for all board meeting minutes from the past 5 years, all treasurer reports, and all enforcement actions taken in the last 2 years. The management company dragged their feet, but Washington state law was on my side. They had 10 business days to respond or face penalties. While I waited, my contractor called. He said someone from the HOA had contacted the city building department and tried to get my permit revoked, claiming the survey was fraudulent. The city rejected the complaint because my survey was done by a licensed professional and matched their records. But the attempt rattled my contractor. He asked if I wanted to pause the project until the hearing. I said no. We were going forward. The fence crew showed up the next Monday. They had the posts, the rails, the panels, everything staged and ready. We were going to frame the whole thing in 2 days and finish the install by Friday. Cynthia showed up 10 minutes after the crew started digging. She had a megaphone. I am not exaggerating. She stood at the end of my driveway with a battery-powered megaphone and started announcing fence rules to the entire street. "Attention residents," she said, her voice crackling through the cheap speaker. "The property at this address is under stop work order. Any contractors working on this site are in violation of Redwood Landing Association covenants. You are subject to fines and removal." My contractor stopped digging and walked over to me. He said he was not getting in the middle of this. I understood. I did not want him dragged into Cynthia's mess. I told him to keep working. If the HOA wanted to fine me, they could try. I would fight it in court if I had to. Cynthia kept the megaphone going for 20 minutes. She repeated the same announcement over and over, adding new details each time. She claimed I did not have a city permit. She claimed the fence was 10 feet tall and violated sightline rules. She claimed I was building on HOA common property. All lies. But she was loud, and she was persistent, and eventually a few neighbors came out to watch. One of them was Luis, the security guard supervisor. He was off duty, but he lived 3 streets over. He walked up to Cynthia and asked her to stop. She turned the megaphone on him. "This is official HOA business," she said. "You are interfering with enforcement." Luis did not flinch. "You are harassing a resident," he said. "That is not enforcement. That is a power trip." Cynthia lowered the megaphone. Her face went red. She looked at me, then back at Luis. Then she turned and walked to her car. She sat there for another 10 minutes, just watching, before she finally drove off. Luis came over and asked if I was okay. I said I was fine, but I was lying. My hands were shaking. I take care of my brother, and this kind of chaos was exactly what I could not afford. If Cynthia escalated to towing or blocking my access to the house, I would have a crisis. My brother needs regular medical appointments, and I cannot risk transportation problems. Luis told me to document everything. He said Cynthia had a pattern. She would push until someone snapped. Then she would use their reaction as evidence of hostility and get them fined or expelled from the HOA. She tried to bait me into yelling so she could clip it and post it out of context. He said the best thing I could do was stay calm and keep recording. I went inside and called my brother. He asked how the fence was going. I lied and said it was fine. He did not need to worry. The crew finished the post holes that day and set the first 6 posts in concrete. They would be back in the morning to finish the framing. I stayed outside until dark, just watching, making sure no one messed with the work. Around 9, I heard a car pull up. It was Cynthia again. She did not get out. She just sat there, engine running, headlights aimed at my yard. After 10 minutes, she left. I pulled the doorbell footage and saved it. Harassment, intimidation, whatever you wanted to call it. I was building a file. The next morning, the public records request came through. The management company sent me a zip file with 200 pages of scanned documents. I printed everything and started reading. What I found changed the whole fight. In the board meeting minutes from 3 years ago, there was a discussion about property line disputes. A resident had challenged the setback rules, claiming they conflicted with the original plat map filed with the county. The board had hired a surveyor to review the entire neighborhood and update the covenant maps. The surveyor found multiple errors. The setback line Cynthia kept citing did not exist. It had been drawn incorrectly on the old HOA map and never corrected. The board had voted to accept the surveyor report and update the covenants, but the updated maps were never filed. Cynthia, as treasurer, was supposed to handle the paperwork. She never did. The property line dispute was already settled in older HOA minutes, and Cynthia hid that page. She knew the setback rule she kept threatening me with was invalid. She knew my fence was legal. She was using outdated maps to bully me into compliance, and she had been doing it to other residents for years. I scanned the surveyor report and the board resolution. I emailed both to my contractor and told him to keep working. Then I emailed the board president and copied the entire board. I attached the documents and wrote 3 sentences. The setback violation you are claiming does not exist. The board voted to accept a corrected survey 3 years ago. Cynthia Anderson failed to file the updated covenants and has been enforcing invalid rules. The response came in less than an hour. It was not from the board president, it was from Cynthia. She accused me of misrepresenting board business and claimed the survey report was never finalized. She said I was spreading false information and that she would be filing a defamation complaint with the management company. I did not respond. I forwarded her email to my lawyer. I had been avoiding legal costs, but this was too much. My lawyer read through the file and called me that night. He said I had a strong case for harassment and possibly fraud if Cynthia had knowingly enforced invalid rules. He drafted a letter to the HOA demanding an immediate hearing, a review of all enforcement actions taken against me, and a formal apology. He also requested that Cynthia recuse herself from any decisions related to my property. The board ignored the letter. The hearing date came and went with no notice, no rescheduling, nothing. My contractor finished the fence. It looked perfect. 6 feet of solid cedar, posts set deep, everything level and square. I took photos from every angle and uploaded them to the HOA portal with a note. Fence complete. Permit approved by city. No violations. Cynthia responded by sending out an email blast to the entire neighborhood. The subject line was violation alert. The body of the email described me as the one resident who refuses community standards and claimed I had installed an unpermitted structure that endangered children and pets. She included a photo of my fence, but it was an old photo from before the crew finished. The angle made it look crooked and unfinished. She was framing me. If you are enjoying this HOA nightmare, hit that like button and subscribe so you do not miss what happens next. I printed the email and added it to my file. Then I did something I had been holding back on. I went to the county recorder office and pulled the original neighborhood plat map. I paid for a certified copy. I also requested the updated survey that the board had commissioned 3 years ago. Both documents were public record. Both documents proved my fence was legal. That weekend, Cynthia tried to get me towed. I came home from the grocery store to find a bright orange tow warning sticker on my truck. It claimed I was parked in a fire lane. I was in my own driveway. I called the tow company. They said they had received a call from the HOA reporting a violation. I told them it was a false report and that I would file charges if they towed my vehicle. They apologized and said they would cancel the order. I filed another police report. Same officer as before. He took my statement and gave me another incident number. He said if Cynthia kept this up, I could pursue a restraining order. I told him I was considering it. Monday morning, I got a notice in the mail. It was on official HOA letterhead this time. A fabricated violation notice with altered dates and recycled photos. It claimed I had failed to attend a mandatory hearing, ignored multiple warnings, and was now subject to a lien on my property for unpaid fines totaling $1,200. The notice was dated 2 weeks earlier, but the postmark was from Friday. Cynthia had backdated it. I scanned the notice and emailed it to my lawyer. He called me immediately. "This is fraud," he said. "You need to file a complaint with the state attorney general and the county DA." I did both that afternoon. Then I contacted the management company and demanded an emergency board meeting. I wanted Cynthia removed from any enforcement role, and I wanted the lien threat voided. The management company scheduled a meeting for the following Thursday. In the days leading up to the meeting, I prepared. I printed every email, every photo, every police report, every timestamp. I put together a timeline showing Cynthia's escalation from the first threatening notice to the fraudulent lien. I burned the doorbell footage onto a USB drive and labeled it with dates and descriptions. I had 60 pages of evidence, and I was ready to present every single one. Thursday came. The meeting was held at the clubhouse at 7 in the evening. I arrived 15 minutes early. Luis was there, off duty again, just watching. He gave me a nod. Cynthia was already inside, sitting at the head table with the board president and 2 other board members. She had her clipboard in a clear plastic sleeve and a stack of her own documents. The board president opened the meeting and asked me to present my case. I stood up and started with the timeline. I showed the original permit application, the first threatening notice, the photos of the moved survey stakes, the doorbell footage of Cynthia tampering with the stakes, the emails pressuring neighbors to file complaints, the megaphone incident, the tow warning, and finally the backdated lien notice. Cynthia interrupted twice. Both times, the board president told her to wait. When I finished, I handed the board president a USB drive with all the footage and a certified copy of the county plat map showing my fence was legal. Now it was Cynthia's turn. She stood up and opened her clipboard. She started reading from a printed statement. She claimed I had been hostile from the beginning, that I had ignored all HOA procedures, and that I had installed a fence that violated multiple covenant rules. She said the board had every right to fine me, and that the lien was justified. Then she made a mistake. She pulled out a photo and held it up. "This is proof," she said. "The fence encroaches on the setback easement. You can see the measurement right here." The photo was one of the staged photos she had taken weeks earlier, before the crew corrected the stakes. But the timestamp was wrong. She had edited it. I could see the font was different. The date format did not match the camera metadata. I asked to see the photo. She hesitated, then handed it to me. I turned to the board president. "This photo is fake," I said. "The timestamp has been altered. I have the original from my own camera, and the date is 3 weeks earlier. She is using staged evidence." Cynthia's face went white. She started to argue, but the board president cut her off. "We will review all the evidence," he said. "This meeting is adjourned." I walked out feeling like I had won a round, but I knew it was not over. Cynthia was not the type to back down. She would escalate. 2 days later, I got a call from my lawyer. The State Attorney General office had opened an investigation into the HOA based on my complaint. They were reviewing the lien notice, the backdated documents, and the enforcement patterns. My lawyer also said the county DA was considering charges for fraud and harassment. That same afternoon, Cynthia showed up at my house. She did not have the megaphone this time. She just stood at the end of my driveway and stared. I was inside, watching through the window. She stayed for 10 minutes, then walked up to my fence and ran her hand along the top rail. She was looking for something, any flaw, any excuse. I opened the front door and stepped outside. She turned and looked at me. "You think you won," she said. "You did not. I can fine you daily until you give up and you cry." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Say that again," I said. She realized what I was doing and walked back to her car. But I had it on video. Her threat, her tone, everything. That clip became the trump card I had been holding. I did not chase her accusations, because I already had the receipts. I saved the video and waited. The following week, the board scheduled a second hearing. This one was mandatory for all board members, and the management company sent a representative to oversee. Cynthia tried to have me barred from attending, claiming I was creating a hostile environment. The management company denied her request. The hearing started at 7. This time I brought Luis as a witness. He testified about the megaphone incident and Cynthia's pattern of harassment. I played the doorbell footage showing her tampering with the survey stakes. I showed the email chain where she pressured neighbors to file complaints. And then I played the video of her threatening me in my own driveway. I present it during the final showdown and quote her own words back to her. "I can fine you daily until you give up and you cry," I said, repeating her exact phrase. That is not enforcement. That is harassment. Cynthia stood up. She tried to argue that I had taken her words out of context, but the video was clear. There was no context that made that threat acceptable. The board president asked her to sit down. Then I pulled out the certified county plat map and the old board resolution. I laid them on the table and walked the board through the timeline. 3 years ago, you voted to accept a corrected survey, I said. You acknowledged that the setback rules were wrong. Cynthia was supposed to file the updated covenants. She never did. She has been enforcing invalid rules and threatening residents with fines that have no legal basis. Every action she has taken against me is based on a lie. The board president looked at Cynthia. "Is this true?" he asked. She did not answer. She just sat there, staring at the table. The management company representative spoke up. If the covenants were not updated, then any enforcement action based on those rules is void. That includes all fines, all liens, and all stop work orders. The board president nodded. He looked at me. "We will void the fines and the lien," he said, "and we will be reviewing all of Cynthia's enforcement actions over the past 2 years." Cynthia stood up again. "You cannot do this," she said. "I am the treasurer. I have authority." "Not anymore," the board president said. "You are suspended from all enforcement duties pending a full audit. If the investigation finds evidence of fraud or misconduct, we will refer this to law enforcement." Cynthia grabbed her clipboard and walked out. She did not say another word. The board voted that night to adopt a policy clarification that destroys her favorite tactic. From now on, any enforcement action had to include a clear citation to the current covenants, a timeline for appeal, and a mandatory review by the management company before fines could be assessed. No more backdated notices. No more unilateral threats. No more railroading residents with invalid rules. 2 weeks later, the state investigation concluded. The Attorney General office found that Cynthia had knowingly enforced outdated rules and had altered documents to support fraudulent fines. She was removed from the board and banned from holding any HOA leadership position in Washington. The HOA changes hearing rules so residents cannot be railroaded. Every enforcement hearing now requires a neutral third-party mediator and a written record. Karen's staged photos get used against her. The county DA filed charges for fraud and harassment based on the backdated lien notice and the altered photo timestamps. Cynthia pled guilty to a misdemeanor and was ordered to pay restitution to 3 other residents she had targeted with fraudulent fines. The funny karma moment came during the settlement hearing. The board was reviewing all of Cynthia's old enforcement cases, and they pulled up one of her own violations from 2 years earlier. She had installed a decorative arbor in her front yard without submitting plans to the architectural committee. It was a clear covenant violation, but she had never filed the paperwork. When the board asked her about it, she tried to argue that arbors did not count as structures. The board president pulled out Article 12 and read the definition out loud. Karen confidently reads the wrong rule section out loud, trying to defend herself, and realizes mid-sentence that the rule explicitly includes arbors. Her face went red, and she sat down without another word. I got a formal apology letter from the board and a check for $800 covering my legal fees and the cost of the survey documents. My fence stands, legal and solid, exactly where it was supposed to be. My brother and I are fine. No more harassment, no more threats, no more measuring wheels in the yard. Luis still waves when he drives by. He told me last week that 3 other residents have come forward with complaints about Cynthia, and the board is considering a full financial audit of her time as treasurer. I do not know where that will go, but I am done. I did my part. I will see you in the next story.